Mortgage demand has jumped almost 10% in just the last couple of weeks. The National Association of Realtors just lost another member of their executive team. And Zillow has announced the top 10 real estate markets for 2024. Did your market make the list? In today's episode, let's dive into the biggest real estate headlines from the past couple of weeks. The president of the National Association of Realtors has stepped down from her role. She said that she has been threatened with blackmail. Her name's Tracy Casper, and this will make for a pretty short stint as president. Tracy only took over as president of the National Association of Realtors around 6 months ago, which at that time, the previous president also had to resign over allegations of harassment. I read a bunch of reports on exactly why Tracy decided to step down here, and it's still not 100% crystal clear as to what happened. All we know is that she told her leadership team that she recently received a threat to disclose a past personal, non-financial matter unless she compromised her position at NAR. I thought that blackmailing somebody like this would be considered illegal, but Tracy must have decided that it just makes more sense for everybody for her to step down and get out of the spotlight. Tracy made a statement that as president and a longtime member of NAR, I have always put the interest of NAR first. As a result of the recent threat and given the significance of this moment for myself, my family, and the organization, it is with a mix of gratitude and a heavy heart that I submit my resignation as your president immediately. The only reason this is really making big news is because NAR has had a lot of shakeup in leadership lately. Just a few months ago, their chief executive, Bob Goldberg, stepped down as well. This one was a little bit more clear, though, as to why. It was right after that big news that NAR and others were found liable for almost $2 billion in the case where the jury determined that home sellers were forced to pay excessive fees to real estate agents. To be clear, the National Association of Realtors has been around for over 100 years. They've had their share of controversy, but in general, they are looked at as the voice for real estate with over 1.5 million members. It's not like this latest news about Tracy Casper is going to take NAR down, but they do have their work cut out for them to regain confidence from both consumers and from realtors. CNBC reported that mortgage demand has jumped almost 10% since the start of the year, even though mortgage interest rates have ticked up a little bit over that same period. They're saying that applications to refinance a home have jumped 19% from the previous week, and they were 30% higher than the same week 1 year ago. And applications for a mortgage to buy a house rose 6% week over week, but here, overall applications were actually down 16% from the same week 1 year ago. All of this tells us that people out there are actually starting to refinance their mortgages again, which kind of makes sense, but the majority of home buyers are still sitting on the sidelines. I'm not surprised to hear that refinances are up. I mean, if you think of all the people who took out a mortgage between like August of last year and November of last year, these people are all stuck with an interest rate probably in the 7% range. Some of them might be even closer to 8%. So if refinancing today gets them down to around 6.5%, that will equate to a significant savings in their monthly mortgage payment. This is great for people who are refinancing, but it's not so great for people who are interested in buying a house, because even though a 6.5% interest rate is not a bad rate compared to where we were just at the peak, it's still pretty high considering that home prices in most major markets haven't come down all that much. Fannie Mae did a survey and found that consumer optimism about mortgage rates has jumped significantly, with a high share of consumers expecting rates to come down this year. And Mark Pallam said that this shift comes on the heels of the bond market rally and downtick in 30-year mortgage rates from those highs that we were just looking at. I think mortgage interest rates have a little more ways to go down before we see a flood of home buyers re-entering the market, but we are headed in the right direction. Zillow just did their annual predictions for what they believe will be the hottest real estate markets of the year, and Buffalo, New York makes the top of the list. If you look at this map, the Midwest and the East Coast actually make up the top 10 markets for 2024, according to Zillow. Kind of weird seeing the entire west side of the United States basically just left out here. I'm a little offended considering I live in Arizona, but I guess the southwestern region and the Sunbelt regions have had their time to shine in the real estate market the past couple of years, so whatever, I guess times are changing. According to Zillow, all of these markets boast solid economic fundamentals, their housing and inventory is moving fast, and they expect home values to stay somewhat stable throughout the year. Buffalo specifically makes the top of the list though because of the increase in jobs created compared to the number of new homes that are being constructed in the area. When they round up their forecast here on how much they think homes will appreciate, they look at listing days per home that has been listed recently, they look at the 2-year change in total employment, and then they look at the change in owner-occupied households. Other parts of the country were just not able to keep up with the Midwest and Eastern regions on these metrics, which look, I do get it. Going back to here in Phoenix, a lot of the people that I know just flat out cannot afford to buy a house lately, and these are people who have good, stable, decent paying jobs. Like, check this out. This is just my market. I'd be curious to see if you guys had a similar situation going on. So we have got 3,172 homes for sale across all of Phoenix. Phoenix is huge, so it kind of represents this entire central section of the valley here. But just like, look at these prices: 1.6, 3.1 million, 3.8 million, 2.1 million, 1.5 million. Okay, 198,000. Where's that? That's probably a condo or something. Oh no, that's just a lot, it appears. Those are some renderings. So 139, okay, that's a little bit of an outlier. 350, 390, 280, 288, 1.7, 489, 1.2. You guys get the point. The issue here in Phoenix and probably across other major markets similar to Phoenix in the country is just that, like, to be able to afford a $500,000 house at a 7.5% interest rate is just almost impossible in reality. Like, most average people with average household salaries just cannot afford houses in this price range with interest rates where they're at. I want to clarify that just because Zillow is saying these 10 markets will be the hottest in 2024, that does not mean that the rest of the country is at risk of a crash or something. Prices are predicted to drop in at least 34 cities according to some reports, but as long as the Fed keeps the interest rate trajectory down, we shouldn't see some catastrophic collapse in the housing market anytime soon. The Silver Tsunami. So I don't know where this term originally came from, but the big question right now is whether or not this silver tsunami will impact the housing market in a negative way over the next 10 years. A silver tsunami is predicted to be an influx of housing supply due to baby boomers downsizing their houses or passing away. Honestly, kind of sad. But if it does happen in the way that people are predicting it to, this is going to be a big deal because, as the US News reported, today there is a demand-supply imbalance where there's too much demand and not enough supply. But that could totally invert as more and more boomers start to sell and downsize their homes. It's like going back to what we were just talking about a minute ago. If rates come down in 2024, but prices remain pretty steady to where they're at right now, that'll keep us in a pretty balanced market. Imagine 5 years in the future, though, where there's maybe not as many buyers out there looking to buy a house, but a ton of homes are hitting the market from these boomers. That could be a bit of a recipe for disaster. We're talking a lot of volume here, too. Zillow reported a few years ago that over 20 million homes would be hitting the market by 2027 thanks to baby boomers aging out. And Meredith Whitney predicts that number actually might be closer to 30 million. That's a lot of homes. And we've got to realize that if that many homes hit the market all at once, that would for sure have a negative impact and could completely wreck the housing market. But the good news here is that the process is going to be slow moving. Economist Mark Fleming points out that these 30 million houses are not going to hit the market in one day or even in a single year. I guess the takeaway for me here is that a silver tsunami is definitely coming. That's inevitable, but it shouldn't put any of us into a panic. This phenomenon alone isn't likely to have as big of an impact on the housing market as these headlines are making it seem like it will. That's a wrap for this week's industry report. Let me know what you guys think about all of these headlines down in the comments. I'll see you next time.